I'm here for the party. Oh, welcome. Let me take your coat. Okay. Here you go. Thank you. Here's your number. Make sure you bring it back. Thank you. In this video, I'm talking about the difference between money, currency, Bitcoin, and stocks. So what you saw in the illustration before is I was arriving at a party and I checked in my coat and I received a coat check with a number that corresponds to the number that was put on my coat. So when I'm ready to leave the party, I can present the coat check, I can present the ticket, and then the coat personnel will match the number on the ticket to the number on the coat, and I would be able to get my coat back. So now you might be asking, what does this have to do with money? It has everything to do with money, okay? Now, if you go on the street and you ask people, what is money, what is currency, most likely they will not have a clue. So, in the past, there were different things that served as money. For example, in a prison, cigarettes can serve as money, okay? But up until 1972, gold was used as money because gold in itself had intrinsic value and it was used as money. And this was an improvement over a barter system where you can take a coat and you can give it to someone in exchange for shoes or whatever, okay? So, but because gold was heavy, not easily transferable, you can think of gold or coat, okay? Because if you go and you buy things, okay, you are giving up something valuable for something else valuable, okay? So the coat represents money. Coat represents something valuable, and you can use that coat to exchange it for something else of value, okay? Now, this is currency. It's not money, it's currency. So a piece of paper is a currency that represents the coat, but this in itself has no value, but this is backed by the coat that I checked in. So when gold was used as money, it was put in a bank or depository, and then people were given certificates like this, or checks or coat checks to represent the gold that was put in the storage. So when people used currency, because up until 1972 a US dollar was backed by gold, just like this ticket is backed by a coat, instead of giving someone heavy gold, they gave them money. So a bill like this, a $10 bill, is nothing different than this, okay? Before 1972, this represented the gold in the storage, just like this represents the coat in the storage closet, okay? Now, other countries also used gold as money. For example, this is a Polish złote, okay? When I went to Poland a year and a half ago, this is what I got after I exchanged my dollars. And in the US, it's called a dollar. In Poland, it's called a złoty. And złoty in direct translations means gold. So złoty at some point in the past, and I don't know the history, was also backed by gold, and this is simply a currency. This is not money. This, well, actually now it is, but this was currency, and behind that was gold, and this represented gold. Now, so this is the difference between money and currency. Money has intrinsic value and use. So let's say in jails they use cigarettes. Cigarettes can be used as money because they are useful to somebody. So even though you might not be a smoker, in jail you can use it because someone else will find cigarette useful to use it and smoke it. Now, gold also has many usages as jewelry and other things, like conductor of electricity and other things. The problem is that if this code check represents one code, okay, and the governments want to control the supply of money. So what they do is, because they cannot create more codes or more gold, they simply print more of these currencies because nobody checks what's behind them, okay? And so if, let's say, this one piece represents one code that I put in the closet, what happens when we print another one of those, and now we have two of these representing one code? This is how money gets devalued, because now one of this represents half of a code, where before one of these represented a full code. That's what inflation is, and that's how currency loses its value. Now, this brings me to the point of Bitcoin, because people are not happy with the fact that the governments control the money supply and they can print as many of these or as many of these or as many of these as they want to. So they created Bitcoin, which supposedly has a limited supply. But now, if you just step back for a second and think about what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is nothing more but an electronic currency, assuming that's currency, or you can call it fiat, okay, that cannot be increased in supply, okay? So people are piling into it because the supply of it cannot be increased. Now, to me, that's not important at all, because to me, it doesn't matter if there's 5 Bitcoins or 21 million Bitcoins. What matters is what is behind that Bitcoin. In case of this, what is behind this? It's my code. If there was no code behind it, then this is worth nothing. It's only worth as much as the paper or the ink that is printed on it. But this in itself has no value. It's what it represents. So Bitcoin, what does it have behind it? Absolutely nothing. Zero. It's not backed by anything. So just because it has limited supply doesn't give it any value. So if you think that Bitcoin is an improvement over fiat, just because you can nicely exchange it between each other and you can technically use it to pay for things, it doesn't give it any value. It's worthless. It doesn't have anything behind it, just like fiat. Actually, fiat or currency is better than Bitcoin because fiat, because the government can tax people. So there's something actually behind it, even though there's nothing tangible like gold behind it. Right now, fiat, which is these currencies, don't have anything behind them. Since 1972, money or currency is not backed by anything anymore. It's just fiat, which is worthless. And that's why what I do is, for as long as fiat is still viewed by people as valuable, I take this, which in my view doesn't have any value, I turn it into something that's valuable instead of turning this that has no value and no backing and turn it into Bitcoin that also has no value and no backing just because its supply is limited. It doesn't make any sense to me. So now this brings me back into stocks, because people might say, well, stocks are just electronic pieces of paper or whatever. Absolutely not. So if we go back to the code check, and this represents my code. In case of stocks, this represents an enterprise, okay? A business behind it that produces something useful, makes products, provides services, creates value to society. This represents value. And so to show you, as businesses grow, as businesses become valuable, they expand into other areas, it's equivalent to you putting a coat in the closet and getting this and coming back in 2-3 years later, and this, instead of representing one coat, it represents 2, 3, 4, or 5 coats, because the value behind this increased and this became more valuable. Okay? And now, not only this, businesses can control the supply of the shares that they have. And if you have a good management and a good business, and the business decides to buy back shares, what actually happens is that you are having more and more codes that are under this, but you can also have a smaller supply of these out there. So not only can the supply of shares in a particular company be limited, it can also shrink over time through buybacks. And yes, the companies absolutely can print more shares for various different purposes. If the business is bad, they might have to print shares to stay afloat. That's why you stay away from companies like this. That's why you focus on good businesses. But businesses can also print shares because they want to expand. So if, let's say, again, this represents one code. What if the company decides to double the number of shares from 1 to 2 of these, but the number of codes increases from 1 to 4, then each of these becomes more valuable. So there's a huge difference between money, currency, Bitcoin, and stocks. And so far, out of all of these things, currency doesn't have any value anymore. It's not backed by anything. So I want to get rid of it as soon as I get it, and I want to turn it into something valuable. Bitcoin is just electronic fiat, electronic currency that also has no value and also has no backing. Stocks, on the other hand, have something behind them. Share certificates have enterprises behind them. Those enterprises can become more valuable over time. The enterprises can also buy back shares, and that is a completely different dynamics. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you understand the difference between money, currency, Bitcoin, and stocks. Thanks for watching.